OK, now with all the job losses in the last week and Victoria's new restrictions, what impact is all this having on the property market? Steph Nash spoke with Westpac senior economist Matt Hassan.
Certainly, there will be some spillovers for the property market. And I think at the moment, the way we're thinking about property, it's not at the forefront of a lot of what's happening around this recession, but it's going to be collateral damage. So anything that's negative for jobs or the reopening of the economy will have spillovers that are negative for the property market. Firstly, around the Qantas developments, for example, we know that there's some sectors that are still not going to be able to function properly as we reopen, and international travel is probably the most heavily affected. And so policy at the moment, with this JobKeeper and JobSeeker arrangements set to roll off at the end of September, we need some more certainty around what the policy is beyond there, and there will need to be industry-specific policies that are there to support businesses like that will become fully operational, but not straight away. Around the Victorian situation, I think it's a slightly different issue. As we go into this reopening, we're kind of testing the water. How will the virus re-emerge as we do this? What's our capacity to put out spot fires in terms of new cases coming through? And this is a really important test. How's our testing, tracing and isolation capacity positioned to contain these sorts of viruses? And I think what we're seeing now is we've sort of rolled back some of the most recent steps of reopening. Can we now get on top of this outbreak in Victoria? That's a really important test for how we run things going forward, because we're going to have to find some middle ground where we can effectively contain outbreaks.
That potentially could mean with the property market, less people coming in.
That's right. So the rollback of restrictions so far has allowed the property market to resume functioning. But if the wider economy is still not able to get back to pre-virus or even near pre-virus levels of activity, that means the weight on household incomes and demand in the property market is more pronounced.
Also in news this week, we had a Freedom of Information request come out through the RBA, in which it was revealed that they almost called for a pause in property transactions, and their worst case scenario for property falls was around 15%. What did you make of that FOI?
The market was in danger of becoming so severely dislocated during the shutdown that rather than allow transactions to go through and prices going haywire and sentiment being unduly unsettled, that it may have been a good option to basically put a halt on all trading. I thought that's interesting that was contemplated. The thing that really grabbed my attention, though, was in terms of the price assessment of the price outlook, the models that they were using to generate price forecasts, they basically had to force them to provide the weakness that they were sort of assessing. And their assessment of the weakness was really being driven by what they were seeing around consumer expectations for house prices. So they're very concerned around what's happening in the sentiment space. And with housing, if you have a common expectation that prices will decline, then urgent sellers will take a lower price now than they might otherwise, and buyers will take their time to move in the market. It kind of anchors you for a price correction, and I think that's where they've landed on their central case, that the expectation's there, and it's pretty hard to avoid a price correction when most people in the market expect prices to be lower over the year ahead.
And just lastly, in that FOI request, there was a lot of data on the struggling construction sector and the construction of new dwellings. What do you think of HomeBuilder? Do you think it goes far enough?
Look, it's probably not quite enough to really energise housing construction. So I think we'll see what the take-up's like. The power of these policies depends a lot on that wider sentiment picture. And I think it could still be quite shaky through the back end of this year. It also strikes me as seems to be quite a complex policy in terms of what you qualify, what it takes to qualify for the support. I think at the margin it'll give us a little bit of boost, and it is the right strategy because if you think about what's happening, we've got some sectors where the ongoing health emergency means that they're unlikely to go back to full operations. The tourism is really international tourism and so on. And so we need to, if we're policy-wise, we sort of want policies that are going to encourage the sectors that can operate to move back more meaningfully. So tactically, it's the right measure. Unfortunately, the timing of this Melbourne outbreak is really awkward. because some of that relates to the quarantining arrangements around inbound travellers. And so
with the military brought in now.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a serious thing. And to get that, to be confident that you can restart that sector, you really need to be confident that this quarantining and isolation system you've got in place can cope with breaches and can prevent breaches. And I think what we're seeing now is that maybe it's not quite up to scratch.
Matt Hassan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.